Good evening, viewers. My name is Kavithaprashanth. I am founder of totsandmoms Foods, and today we are doing a live session for which the topic is baked foods are not unhealthy. This happened such that I was reading few of our customers' comments. She said you generally post healthy recipes and you ask us to stay away from junk foods, but why do you share recipes of baked foods, and also why do you sell cookies? So I've been baking at home for a year, for over many years now. Healthy baking has always been the choice since I had my little one then, 8-year-old now. I used to bake using millets and healthy flours, healthy natural sweeteners, and multiple things, methods that I could learn. And eventually I learned about a group called Oh Wonderful, which is run by Simran Oberoi. And then is when I thought this is the right time to bring her on board, answer all your queries, and to make people understand that junk foods, all baked foods are junk, is a big myth. And Simran Oberoi is the right person to answer that. Please let me know if my voice is audible and I will bring her aboard right now. Hi Simran.
Hi, Kavitha.
We will start with our session today with your introduction. So please let everybody know who you are, how amazing. I mean, I should be telling all that later because you're doing so many things that are so inspiring, not just having a group. Okay, please start.
Thank you so much, Kavitha. I'm the founder of a wonderful mom bakers community, both of which are basically social enterprises that focus on healthy baking.
And you must tell about the projects that you have done as well, Simran.
The
Under
project
your social enterprises, what is that you have done? Because I know it, I'm very much inspired.
So we do a lot of work as a community in social impact. So it can range. So what we do is, of course, from our intent is to raise awareness about healthy baking, but also use healthy baking for broader community outreach. So whether we are doing distributions as a community of healthy bakes in across India, and not just India, in a few markets outside and a few geographies outside India also. We do distribution of healthy bakes in underrepresented communities, with for children, for elderly. We also focus on using our healthy baking for making women who are, probably from underprivileged backgrounds, who have not been socially or economically strong. We focus on how to teach them how healthy baking, and then how they can actually set up their own ventures, or work with somebody so that they can remain financially independent. We do a lot of fundraising primarily, but again, like I said, everything centers around healthy baking and how to use healthy baking in all of these things.
Thank you so much, Simran. It's been a very inspiring journey that you have had. I have seen you grow over years now as an individual, as a community, and definitely as an enterprise now. So, Simran, here I was introducing to my audience, telling that anything baked is junk is an assumption. It is a big myth, and I would request you to answer it eventually. We'll start with our questions first. What is the origin of baking?
See, the origin of baking in itself, I think most people think that baking is, originated in the Western context, in other markets, in other countries. But we do also have a lot of, so our traditional tandoor, for example,
Correct.
was the way in which people were actually technically baking in India, but we didn't call it baking. Okay, so there are the form that of cooking that we see where where hot air or dry, and where we bake, where we cook something in a dry environment and using hot air is typically baking, and it can have different terminology. Could have originated elsewhere or in India, but at the end of it is a wonderful way of one, of course, giving variety to our families and our children, and two, of course, trying to make sure that a lot of things that we typically think are unhealthy, and I think the association of baking also sometimes is with unhealthy things, because people think, okay, baking, it's definitely going to be a cake which is full of maida or refined white sugar.
Exactly. That was my next question. Why is baking mistaken as unhealthy?
I think it's got to do with the overall perception about traditionally what is used in baking. So a lot of the ingredients that are typically used in baking are seen as unhealthy. So things like maida, things like white sugar, things like artificial colors. These are things that are typically used in, if you see,
Can
go
we
outside.
name them to the Iyengar bakery or other bakeries that we see?
But I think, but yes, you're right. Traditionally, we tend to not understand that most of the commercial bakeries, and sometimes we're so nostalgic, we think, oh, we ate this in our childhood, so it's really great, and we have that association also, which is pleasant from a childhood point of view. But like I said, when you look back and you deconstruct what is being used in it, it makes you understand that what you were consuming, and if you were consuming a lot of it on a regular basis, it is likely to have been unhealthy. So, we need to understand that that would have probably triggered our thought process. Now, our awareness about what goes in is what has triggered and created that process. And therefore, it's important to understand that all of baking is not unhealthy. Okay.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
we need to revisit our idea about baking itself because of the ingredients we're using now.
Correct. So, what matters the most when you say we focus on healthy baking? What is the switch that is being done?
What is the switch? What is the switch? Yeah. So I think the switch is in all of the primary ingredients that we use in healthy bake, in any kind of baking. Right now, what is the largest component of a bake? The largest component of bake typically will be a flour. Okay. So, something like a flour has to be, when we make the switch to alternative flours, like flours which are grown locally to us, like say ragi, for example, you use it so extensively in your,
Exactly.
right? So, something which is local, something which is grown indigenously, something which is non-refined, non-processed, that non-stripped of all kinds of nutrition value. Those are
Exactly.
the ones who make that switch to flours like that. That's the big switch. The second big switch is for sweeteners. Okay, so instead of white sugar, instead of refined, like the refined versions of it, if we try to focus on non-refined versions, unrefined versions, which are least processed, like jaggery blocks or coconut sugar, for example. And of course, for diabetic, things like naturally, made stevia. We are obviously making a big shift again to remove the other large component that typically is associated with unhealthy when we talk about baking. And of course, if I go to the fats, things like ghee, for example, ghee is, I think, a much maligned word. I don't know why, but I think ghee is a very important ingredient, essentially
Exactly.
processed butter that you get outside. If you're using ghee in which you've pretty much made at home, or you have a pure form of ghee, access to pure form of ghee, that's so much better. So if we make those switches, our bakes automatically start becoming healthy.
The switches to healthy flour, healthy sweeteners, healthy fats that are used in our baking can really give that simple switch. And people assume it is difficult to bake using these healthy flours or healthy alternatives. And also, when they try at home, they feel it's easy to bake using maida and sugar. How will I use jaggery and ragi or any other millet form? So, what is it that you would recommend? Or you have been doing?
See, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that it is not easy, all right, to shift from something that you've typically either baked with or tasted for a long time. So I'll break it down into two parts, basically the baking part and the part which is related to the taste. Okay. First things first, how you bake with it, you definitely need to be experienced. You definitely need to understand how to bake with different kinds of flours, how they work in combination with with certain sweeteners, how they work in combination with certain fats, right? So we can't just make a direct, complete 100% switch. Like I can't pick up randomly a recipe which traditionally has maida and white sugar and say X whatever kind of fat they're using, and immediately replace everything within it, all the ingredients with alternatives, and without having knowledge of how that should work, and then just create a wonderful bake. So that is unrealistic, and that is also going to lead to food wastage if you're not going to have a kind of bake that you really enjoy eating. So what's important to understand is that to make the switch step by step. Okay, I always say that use a tried and tested recipe. There are two ways to make the switch. One is either
Exactly.
you a tried and tested recipe, which you've already explained where they'll find it. Okay, the place to find those recipes is a Wonderful Mom Baking Factory.
Yeah.
So you go ahead, find the recipes which are tried and tested with exactly with the alternative ingredients, and explore how to use that option and then bake. Okay, that helps you. All right. But the other way to do it is to take any other regular recipe, all right, and switch, like I said, the biggest component first, okay, which is your flour. Keep the other components the same. Make the shift slowly, one step at a time. So keep it with white sugar, keep it with any with if it contains butter, but just switch the flour. Okay, automatically you would have made a big change. That's one. The second thing is read up and understand also. So a lot of us outside in OMBC and many other people who are healthy bakers now um, are all self-taught. You know, I'm sure you will agree with that, Kavitha. I think
Exactly.
taught. We've learned ourselves, right? So what we typically have done also is we spend a lot of time understanding and researching about different flavors and how, like I said, how everything responds to a change. So for example, if I'm switching say maida, okay, with say whole wheat tends to have more requires more moisture. Okay, otherwise your bake will start drying out. Or when you're switching, making a direct switch, you'll realize that okay, maybe this recipe asked for X amount of milk, but now when I've switched it with whole wheat, I need more milk than I needed earlier. So understanding this nuance, these small nuances, these small things is very important. I think many bakers, healthy bakers who are sharing that publicly, I share it publicly. Many other bakers follow people who can help you understand and learn this in a guided way, so that you understand how these different kinds of components will work together, how the switches can be made in a step. Like again, I'll insist, because I'm very stressed about food wastage. I know that if it doesn't work, everybody will end up throwing it in the dustbin, and I would not encourage that. So I think it's important to understand that make a switch one step at a time, make small portions, okay, if you're doing it with a regular recipe. Otherwise, go for a tried and tested recipe. And it's not likely that you're going to fail, because like I said, there's a reason why they're called tried and tested, and there's a reason why that group was created, to share tried and tested recipes and prevent people from wasting time looking in 100 places and not finding any information.
Well said. So two things that you recommend is use that tried and trusted recipe which is made by a healthy baker, or take up any recipe which is tried and tested but which is not healthy and make that one switch with the flour. Do not do the flour and sweetener both at a time and risk it. If it has a little amount of baking soda, still go ahead and use it. Maybe next
Correct.
time you can experiment it without it, right?
Absolutely.
Fine. And I would bring in this question in between. Microwave ovens and these OTGs, both are unhealthy, is another perception or myth. So, how do we break this? Anything baked isn't healthy is one way of telling because of the content in it, or another assumption is because of the method it is cooked.
Yeah, so both are actually healthy. I think there's a myth that is associated with microwave ovens, because people think that okay, it emits rays and therefore you should not bake in it. But let me clarify that we don't bake in the microwave oven in the microwave mode. Okay, the mode that is used in baking when you're using a microwave is the convection mode, which does not release any radiation. It does not release any rays. Okay, so whether you're doing it in the microwave convection mode, right, or whether you're doing it in the regular OTG, the method of baking, like I said, the method of cooking essentially is going to be the same. Now there are a lot of bakers who also bake with the air fryer. Okay, does exactly the same thing as the OTG. Okay, so these are all equipments that you can typically use comfortably. You're not going to lose out on any kind of big healthy component if you are using any. There is a different way, but each of them works differently. Okay, so we have to understand, a lot of people who are, for example, if after me sharing this, so you're not comfortable with using any of this, you can still bake on the gas.
Exactly. Pressure cooker.
So the equipment at the end of the day is a way to get to the final bake, right, or the final outcome, which is what you're looking at when you're making something. But these are different instruments that you can use. There are people who bake on the gas stove as well, and that's absolutely fine. So
Exactly.
you can use any of those.
So it has been there with us, and we can always, Simran, okay, we can hear you now. And it is not that always a difficult option, but the switch in the mind is also necessary, I would say. Okay, so is there a different thing that is needed? I mean, kinds of baking equipments is the question that we had put, but generally everyone is aware of the baking equipment that is needed. If you could list down some, and if you could say, is there anything extra that you would need if you think about being a healthy baker?
See, from an equipment point of view, I think a couple of things to keep in mind is that, and I do get a lot of questions about what kind of a utensil should we bake in, okay, because what is healthy to bake in, all right? So typically, it's very important, one, to use, if you're using aluminum, for example, lot of the baking tins, okay? So we've spoken about things like, the oven and all of that. So that's one piece of equipment, right? The second piece of equipment that we typically use will be the baking tins. Okay, for that, the most important thing to keep in mind is that if you're using aluminum baking tins, use good quality ones which are certified or bought from place where which is, and it's intended for baking. Okay, don't pick it up just from any random location, because because sometimes if it's not made properly, and if it's not if it's not bake safe, then it's going to do you more harm than actually good. All right. So it's very important to keep those small. These are very small things. A lot of people, don't notice or register these things. But I think from an equipment point of view, use the right kind of baking equipment, or the pans which are made with certified, which are certified for baking. So aluminum of that grade. All right. Otherwise, if you're using glass, use your glass utensils, which again are bake safe. A lot of people bake in ceramic. Okay, you can use any of these typically. I do not, unless you're baking on the gas, you can't use the steel containers in your ovens. Okay, so that will typically not work. A lot of people ask me, is it okay to bake with silicone? Yes and no. Silicone, for example, it really depends. If you have good quality, again, if you're getting it for a good quality from a good quality vendor, then you get it. But at the same time, I think it's not something I'm very comfortable baking with, so I just avoid baking in silicone pans. Okay, but yeah, if you, like I said, if you're comfortable, but make sure that you're not compromising on these things from an equipment point of view. You usually need a hand beater or hand mixer or a whisk or a stand mixer. Okay, any of those. You need a few cookie cutters. All right, from an equipment point of view. Baking trays, baking pans, depending on what your usage is. So, if you're using it only for home, a couple of baking tins will work from a cake point of view, and a flattish tin for cookies will work absolutely fine, from a baking point of view. Uh, Usually a spatula is very important because it helps you not waste. So you use it for mixing, you use it for pouring. If you like baking muffins, then a muffin tray, muffin liners, things like measuring cups. Okay, there are two kinds of measuring cups for people who are really serious about baking. You use your solid measuring cups, so measuring cups and spoons for solid ingredients, and measuring cups and spoons for liquid ingredients separately. If you're that particular, otherwise with one set at least. All right. A weighing scale is very important. I always suggest that people who are typically starting their baking journey and very, very new, and not just really from a healthy baking point of view, but generally starting to bake, they should try to bake by weight. Okay, try to understand how every ingredient works out in terms of the weight. So use a weighing scale, a digital weighing scale, preferably, to get an idea of that. I mean, broadly, I think unless they're going for any complex bread baking and things like that, most of these things, and a simple bowl and spoon and all of that at home, that's about it. You don't really need.
The list is huge, so is it that expensive to start baking for a person who's never baked?
Not at all. It's a very, not at all. I mean, everything that I've shared are things that you'll get are available very easily. You don't have to go, and buy expensive pieces. So it's not expensive at all. Even your ovens are not expensive. The OTG itself is also not expensive.
Right.
So you can easily go and pick up all of this equipment from anywhere. There are many baking stores which are good, which are reasonably priced. Online stores also which are reasonably priced. So you can easily pick.
Thank you, Simran. I am taking up the last question. Is baking healthier than frying, Simran?
Okay, so I'm sure there'll be people who'll disagree with me on this, but my personal belief is that for a lot of things, especially a lot of snacks that we have in the Indian context, baking tends to be healthier, as per me. Okay, tends to be the healthier option as compared to frying, because, like I said, because I mean, see, a lot of us are not really well trained in terms of understanding how much to fry. People don't even have the awareness about what is the right kind of oil to fry in, for example.
Exactly.
unless you really have a very good idea of what is the science behind the right kind of deep frying, for example, right? So what is the kind of oil to use? What is the right temperature at which the oil should be there?
Temperature, exactly.
All of
If
that.
not,
I
reusing is also not recommended. Reusing, then at a right temperature, if you have cooked it, then you can reuse. It's not that you
absolutely
cannot reuse any oil at all. If you have used it in the right temperature, right vessel, saved it well, and you're using it, reusing is also allowed.
correct. So that is what, we have to, but that is what I'm thinking, that knowledge. I'm glad you've spoken about this here, because it's important that this kind of information goes out. People understand that these are elements to keep in mind. We just go in and start frying. We don't understand that these are all the factors to keep in mind to make sure that, something that is deep fried remains healthy. Okay. If we don't know that, or if we don't have enough knowledge of that, then I mean, an easier, like I said, a better, faster way to do it would be to bake it. If you want to still go for a healthy option, it's still healthy. Like I said, I prefer baking to a lot of the frying, to be very honest. Okay.
Correct.
Because
Where do you prefer? Give us examples where you generally this recipe requires frying, or traditionally it is fried, but you have tried baking and it worked well.
I've done samosas. I love, my kids are very fond of that, so
Bake
I know
samosa.
I'm very comfortable baking it. And I think people have this reservation about, okay, or even French fries or any kind of fries, even for that matter. I mean, I haven't tried it so far, but I know bakers who have tried to make pakoda and bhajiyas in
Yeah, air
air,
fryer,
you know,
baking.
is that it's not like I'm saying that, I should not be using anything at all. But if I can minimize the use of certain fats like the oil, or I can do it with minimal, why should I go for something which needs me to use a lot more?
Exactly.
Right? These are things that can easily be done. I think the worries usually arise from, okay, is it going to taste the same? Is it going to be crisp? It's actually crisp. I never faced any challenge in terms of crispness. Yes, there's a technique. Yes, you need to follow certain steps to make sure that it's, the texture remains the same. But I don't think, but there's no compromise on the taste and the texture.
And Simran, thank you for educating us on healthy baking. The whole team is happy that we were able to bring you in. And Simran, before we close this session, do you have anything to recommend? I had one question from Jasmita Oberoi. I know this is your sister. I'll take that up. Jasmita is asking, what about chicken puffs, which are so tasty? Can they be made in a healthier manner?
Yeah, OMBC. My answer to everything is OMBC, because there is a
Go
recipe for,
ahead.
somebody's just shared recently a recipe for made with whole wheat. Things like these multiple layers, things that need multiple layers, right? That's where it becomes tricky.
What
So
flour do you use?
the flour that though I haven't tried that, but the flour that they've used is whole wheat. Any closing words?
Yeah.
I think the closing words I think would probably be, which I say everywhere, is that everybody should do healthy baking. Okay, I think that's that's the underlying statement. Everybody should bake healthy. I think don't get scared. So I think one of the things that puts people off is because they are worried. Okay, and I think we've psyched it. We've made baking itself so complex. Okay, so I want to tell people, which I say everywhere. I think I'm going to sound
Okay, I
repetitive.
would like to interrupt you here. Simran, I'm very sorry. One question comes in my mind. Baking is only for occasions or cakes or something like that. So daily usage, can we bake our foods? This
Yeah,
only
so there are
assumption.
no, so there are a lot of things you can actually bake for daily use, like say crackers, for example, like what I do for the kids, right? So I don't like to give them stuff like say cookies and all of that on a regular basis. Even the healthy ones, I'm not particularly fond of giving them anything, even with natural sweeteners. I don't want to give them something sweet every day. So, things like say savory crackers or, methi biscuits or things like that, okay, which you can bake and keep and you can use on a daily basis. So, things which are savory, which can be stored for a long time, which can be given as a daily snack. Things like makhana, for example, like fox nuts. You bake them and keep them aside. You give them as a snack on a regular daily basis. They remain healthy. You don't have to worry about, the texture changing. You don't have to quickly make something and worry that, okay, this is not healthy.
You
It's
can stock
healthy.
it up for a week. It will be good, right? If we do that.
Be good for a week, yeah. So things like that I use. So there are so I mean in the past I've also tried, like, so for example, like if you're making bhindi, which is crispy, Okay, so lady's finger, which they make in Indian dishes, right? So make it crispy.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've also done like some mixed kind of dal with rice. I mean, sort of not like a khichdi exactly, but a porridge kind of thing. It bakes like a casserole with vegetables. You just put it in the oven, it'll bake
Okay.
exactly the same way, but it'll just be a thicker version with slight, like the texture being a little more firm for the pulses and for the lentils and for the rice. But a lot of the things, for example, like these can be easily baked in the oven and on a daily basis from an Indian cooking point of view as well.
Okay. Thank you, Simran. What is it that you would like to say for somebody who is hesitating to start baking and especially healthy baking?
So I think the biggest thing is that, one is that if you're hesitating to start, I think the worry is of failure, as with everything else, right?
Yeah.
So I think the couple of things that I said earlier will really help you that, go take it stepwise. Do not overwhelm yourself with a lot of changes at the same time. Make small changes, make small portions. And don't lose heart. See, a lot of us, I think there's a special session we had done on OMBC talking about how our journey from bricks to breads. Okay, we've been baking bricks and then we have now
Okay,
graduated.
bricks to breads.
So the thing is that we comfort from the fact that all of us have made this journey. Okay, all of us
Exactly.
have started at a point in time where we knew nothing. Okay, and there are so many thousands of us now, really. So don't thousands of people who have never done it can do it. So can you. You can also do it. You just need to take it stepwise. You need to be careful. You need to understand some principles. But
Correct.
beyond that, it's really about experimenting and taking that leap. It's very important.
Thank you, Simran. You were telling something as your closing words. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, I'm happy to answer questions actually. So my closing was I don't have anything more to say except for the fact that you everybody should be baking healthy. I'll tell you why. Because like I said, consumption patterns have changed. Things that we were not eating in maybe 10-15 years back, we're eating more frequently now. Okay, so let's not compromise on our health because our taste, our consumption has changed. Let's change the ingredients that we're using in things we are typically consuming much more of, like say if kids are eating more bread or they're eating more cookies, then change the profile of what you're actually serving to them or giving to them. All right, and do it through healthy baking. The second thing is basically that answers the question that you were actually asking, was that don't hesitate. There is a learning curve. It's going to take some time, but don't lose heart, don't get disappointed. Ask your questions, don't worry about that, and learn with an open slate. Don't think that you know baking so you know healthy baking. I'm being very clear. Okay, it's very different. It's extremely different from each other. Techniques are the same, okay, but the ingredients don't work in the same way. So come to it with an open mind, be ready to learn. I'm still learning. There are so many flours I just don't know how to bake with. I'm still experimenting. Every few days I'm learning about something new in terms of healthy baking, not just flours, any kind of ingredient. So keep in a very open mind. Okay, that's very important for your entire journey in healthy way.
Fine. Thank you, Simran. Thank you for joining us, and all the best to you and the good work that you have been doing for a long time. And in any ways, Tots and Moms can be a part of it. I would be happy to represent.
Definitely.
Be part of a wonderful community. I mean, that is how I have also been able to do something at Tots and Moms. The healthy bakes that I have been having at
And
Tots and
wonderful.
Moms is all. I remember talking to you about the recipes then before launch.
Right. We remember. I remember we were speaking about the recipes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Simran. I'm ending the session. Take care. We'll keep in touch. Bye. Thank you, everybody, for joining in.
Thank you, Kavitha. Bye bye.
Bye.